Hi, Kathleen. How are you?
Great, Nancy. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to talk to you and to spend this time. I'm sure that the viewers will just have lots of things to mull over and go and find you to research and so on. But first, let's start with where you're located.
I am in a small farming community in Oregon. I'm right outside of Eugene, Oregon. It's a small town of about 300 or 3,000 people. We don't even have a stoplight in town.
One of those little communities. That's great.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we have a little bit of property and we have rescued a lot of animals. So we have our own mini sanctuary that's not open to the public. It's just we've got horses, chickens, a rooster, dogs. We've had goats, ferrets, the whole nine yards. And really, I feel very, very fortunate to be able to help the animals in that way beyond what I do by not eating them.
That's awesome. Surely appreciate that for sure. So tell me, what was your journey into veganism? How did you come to it?
You know, it's interesting because it was a long drawn out journey. I was 64 when I went vegan, so that was 7 years ago. And when I decided to go vegan, I didn't want to identify as a vegan. I actually started plant-based because I was dealing with inflammation. I was feeling kind of old and frumpy, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this how it's going to be? And so I started doing a lot of research, and it's interesting because I was doing animal rescue at that point, but I didn't connect the dots of, okay, you're rescuing on the one hand, but you're consuming on the other hand. And I dug very deep into the information, documentaries, books, podcasts. I started following a lot of the influencers, yourself included, where I was finding all this great information. And it was about 6 months in where I wasn't consuming any animal or dairy at all, but I still wouldn't call myself vegan. 6 months in, I was at the grocery store walking by the meat department to go to the produce department, and I literally had a visceral response to looking at the packaged meat, and I thought, how could I have been so blind? And I literally was stopped in my tracks, and I looked over at the meat, and I started crying. I was like, I was so disconnected from the reality of what it meant to rescue animals, what it meant to love animals, and what it meant not to consume them. And so it took me about 6 months before I said, okay, I am a vegan. And since that time, I'm like, vegan AF. I even have a shirt that says that.
Well, that's awesome. And the other thing that's awesome is that it also shows that it doesn't matter your age. You can go vegan at any time.
Absolutely.
Because we're not all connected all the time to what's happening, what we're doing, and the bigger impact of it.
Right.
So, as you said, you were rescuing animals, but you were consuming them. And then all of a sudden you had an awakening, and that's what happens to a lot of people.
Right. Well, and it's so interesting because I've been involved in animal care for so many years, and I really didn't see the disconnect. And that's what I realized today is that people come to this in whatever way they're meant to, and it is a spiritual awakening. I think that I've been on a spiritual path since I was in my early 20s, and my first spiritual teacher, she actually was from Romania, I believe it was, or Hungary, and her father was a scientist, a spiritual scientist, and he actually encouraged her to see beyond the physical. She was a phenomenal spiritual teacher, but that was way back when I was in my 20s. And, being in my 70s now, I've been on this path for a long time, but it took what it took. And I think for me, what I realize is that probably is the most spiritual thing that I've done, is to identify as a vegan and say, I will never harm animals to the best of my ability that I can. Because you always have those people who say, well, what about when you're driving a car and you hit a bug? And it's like, well, you can't eliminate it 100%, but you can certainly have a level of awareness that allows you to live more compassionately.
Definitely. And when people come up with these kind of, they're not the most intelligent questions, because you know what I'm saying? You go
You're being
outside,
so kind.
you go outside and you step on an ant and you can't, you can't help it. You're
Right.
like, so it's kind of stupid to say that kind of stuff.
It really is.
Oh,
And they often go, it's kind of the gotcha question, or the gotcha, well, what about this? And it's like, well, what about this? I had a guy recently on social media who just he was all caps, you're such a hypocrite. You call yourself a vegan. And I'm like, whatever. Okay. Block this guy, because he obviously wanted a fight. He wasn't willing to listen to reason. I mean, I came up with some very reasonable answers, what I thought was very reasonable, and he just didn't want to hear what the truth was. So, you do what you can, and I think the best thing that any of us can do is live by example. As I said, I'm in my 70s and I'm very, very healthy. I work out twice a day. I'm doing this
you look
protocol
great.
right now. Thank you. I went on it was a 6 or 7 mile bike ride this morning. Later today, I'm going to go to the gym. I eat 100% whole food, plant-based. So that's a distinction too, is like, there's a difference between being vegan and eating healthy. A lot of
Correct.
people assume the vegan diet. I don't believe in the vegan diet. I believe in veganism as a lifestyle and a philosophy, and I believe in plant-based eating as the diet protocol.
Exactly. And like when we're talking about like questions, is like the person that asks you, what about if you were stranded with a pig? And I'm like, I'd have a companion.
Yeah, we'd have a really good time. It's like my new buddy.
We could play, we could forage together.
Absolutely.
Just dumb questions. Anyway, I escalated. I better bring it down. So tell me, what you said, that you rescue animals, horses, chickens, dogs, cats, and so on. What does a typical day look like for you on your property?
Wow, that's a great question. Before we started this conversation, I actually went out and gave the horses their treats, because we have 2 older horses that both have Cushing's disease. So we have to feed them very, very high calorie foods, and it's a very specialized food. So before I started this conversation with you, I went out to make sure they had what we call their num-nums, and those are their treats. And then we have another rescue that he came out of a pretty horrendous situation. And he kind of gains weight just by looking at food. So he gets a very low calorie treat. And so he thinks he's getting what the girls are getting. We only have 3 horses. But my typical day starts about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And it starts with, actually, I take time to do some real grounding and meditative work and reading. Something that's, right now I'm reading the book by Dr. Frank Sabatino, Weightless. It's a phenomenal book. He's been vegan for 50 years. And a really great book. And so I do some reading in the morning. Then usually I go out on a morning walk or a bike ride, depending on the weather. And then what I do is I will go out. Well, first I feed the horses and the dogs and all of the animals that we have, the chickens. And I have to remind all the animals how spoiled they are, because they sometimes forget. They all came from pretty rough backgrounds. But on the rescue that we do, it's kind of like we let life bring them to us. It's like when there's a need, it's like, okay, we'll go ahead and do that. And recently we fostered 3 kittens that were about 3 or 4 weeks old when they were found. And we fostered them knowing that we weren't going to keep them, because we're just kind of overloaded with animals right now. And so I do what I can to help in whatever way I can. But So my day is then I go into my office and I'll either work on a podcast episode. I have a few clients that I produce their podcast, and I prefer to work with people who are in the vegan space just because it really aligns with where I'm at in life. And then, go out and feed the horses again and do some work around the property. One of my favorite things to do is actually dig in the dirt. It's like
Uh-huh.
I really, really enjoy getting close to nature. So it's a very low key life. I used to do a lot of traveling, and I used to be a keynote speaker at conferences. And then when COVID hit, and there were all the shutdowns, and now with all the craziness on airplanes, I really don't want to get on a plane and travel. And so I've been online for 25 years now. So I started doing digital marketing in the late 90s. So I've been in that game for a while. But my day it's just very low key. Take care of the animals, do some work, enjoy time reading. A pretty simple life.
And I asked you that because I think it takes special people to rescue animals, and I'm not just talking about cats and dogs, like
Right.
you said, horses and the other bigger animals, because if it wasn't for you, they'd wind up on somebody's plate. They wouldn't have any place to go. They would wind up. So, and it's not like a one-time thing where you just have them and you go, hey,
Right.
okay, I'm fostering or I'm adopting, or, I have this little sanctuary for these animals, and you go out in the morning and that's it. Your day is done
Right.
with them. I mean, it involves a lot of work, a lot of
You are
heart.
correct. Yeah, it does involve a lot of work, and many people don't realize that. Like hauling hay, for example, it's like these are like 100 to 150 pound bales of hay, and that's one reason that I'm so fortunate and I'm so grateful that I eat as healthy as I do and I work out as much as I do, because there's some heavy lifting that goes with having even a micro sanctuary. And actually, one of my clients, she has a podcast where she will interview people who run sanctuaries. She just recently interviewed Miyoka, and she's just some phenomenal people that she's had on her show. And what she's doing is a summit in January that it's free to the public, and it's teaching. We're getting best practices from people who run sanctuaries on how to raise money, because one of the greatest challenges is the financial commitment. And we're self-funded, and I will tell you, there's some months that we invest thousands of dollars, whether it be vet care, because with two older horses and having Cushing's disease, the last visit we had was, I think, $1,700. And it's like, this is the commitment. And we've had people say, well, why don't you just get rid of the animals? It's like, that's like saying get rid of your spouse or your kids. It's not going to happen. So when you take in animals and you make that level of commitment, it's a commitment for life. And it's like you don't just pack up the horse in the car and say, okay, let's go. It's like there are lots of responsibilities that come with it. And yet that's,
Exactly.
I'm happy to do it. I mean, it's not like I feel very blessed when I go out and I'm literally shoveling their poop. I'm like, God, this is so great. Thank you, God. Thank you. And I'm truly grateful to have that opportunity.
Right. And I'm just mentioning that because you did say that you have you rescue animals. And, because at one point I was like, oh, it would be great, rescue animals. And then I had to like take it back a notch, because it's not just rescue animals, is you have to have the space for them. You have
Exactly.
to be able to feed them. You have to be able to be responsible for them, take care of them when they're ill, and
Right.
then the physical work that's there. So, so it's good that you mentioned that, because some people might nilly-willy go, oh, I'm going to do and get some animals. And then, a month or two down the line, they might feel like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And that's exactly, it's good to have someone who has a podcast like that. You said the person.
Yes, it's Better Life for Animals is the podcast
Okay.
that Cheryl has. And, I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of people don't realize what a commitment is. And there are people that start what they call sanctuaries. They're not certified to have a sanctuary, and they're kind of backyard hoarders. I mean, there are situations that animals get rescued from people who are animal hoarders, and those are some of the worst situations. Like our boy Dustin, he's 16 now, and he actually came out of a rescue where there were 106 horses that were abandoned. They were high desert in Oregon, and 60 of them were already dead by the time that it was discovered that they needed to be rescued. So there was a whole crew of people who went in, they rescued the horses, all in very bad shape. Our neighbor was fostering one of the mares. Well, they didn't even know she was pregnant at the time, and turns out the day before, he realized this gal is definitely pregnant. And so the day that Dustin was born, it was like, do you know anybody who could take the baby? And we're like, hey, we'll take him. Yeah, and it was something that we had talked about and we thought through, because again, every animal that you take in, there's not just the space commitment, there's the food commitment, there's the vet care commitment, there's the, like with the horses, they have to get shod, their feet have to be taken care of. And a lot of horses that are abandoned, they have these feet that they can hardly walk on. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because it's not just, oh, wouldn't that be fun to do? It's like, no, wouldn't that be a big commitment? So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, like that's why I said kudos, because people don't understand that that it's a lot of work. So
right,
a lot of kudos for people who actually take in the animals, the sanctuaries, and help them and save them and all of that. Now, tell me, what inspired you to launch Vegan Visibility?
Well, thank you for asking that. I actually have had my business since 1994, and it's gone through a few recreations. At one point, I was doing keynote speaking. I was doing corporate training. I would go to companies and do consulting. I was working with a lot of corporations. And over time, actually, when I discovered digital marketing back in, I think it was 1997 or 98, I loved it. It was like I saw what was going to happen with the internet, just like we're seeing with AI right now. And it was after I became vegan, I was going through kind of a soul searching of like, what do I want to do with my skills and where can I best help people? And I was out on a run one morning, and it was like, what vegans really need, these businesses, they need visibility. And it was just like vegan visibility. It came to me. And I'm a digital marketer. I'm a speaker. I'm writing a book called Speak Out right now, and it's about using speaking to grow a business, a mission, and a movement. And so I have skills that can help the people that don't know how to get that visibility. And so it came out of the whole idea of what vegan businesses really need is they need visibility. And it's helping people to be realistic about how they get that visibility, because a lot of people try to be all over the place. And really, it's about going deep into what you're doing and not trying to be all things to all people. And one of the things, like with my own podcast show, is I will only interview vegans. I have people that they reach out to me and they go, oh, I'd love to be on your show. I'm a nutritionist and this and that. And I say, are you vegan? Well, no, but I'm almost vegan. It's like, well, almost, it's like being almost pregnant. So it really came out of the need to help people who needed that visibility in a realistic way.
Right. And so how do you help vegan plant-based businesses stand out in a crowded digital space that we have?
The way that I help is I oftentimes will teach them how to get on podcast shows. A lot of times people say, I want to start a podcast. It's like, well, have you been on any shows yet? And they haven't. And it's like, okay, let's start with you first laying a proper foundation. I don't work with startups and I don't do nutrition training or anything like that. And people often think if you're a vegan, you must teach people how to eat right. And it's like, no, I don't have the patience for that. There's plenty of people who can do that. But a lot of the work that I do is teaching them how to get on podcast, how to package their information in a way that it's usable by their market. For example, with the clients I work with who have podcasts, it's like, okay, let's look at who's the market you're trying to reach, what's the message you want to get out there, what's the budget that you have, because that's another consideration for businesses. There are many people that want to start businesses, but they want to do it on a complete shoestring budget. And it's like, I get that, I understand that, but you also have to have a budget for buying the right tools and resources, and possibly even hiring some team members to help you. So also, if they want to write a book, I have connections with people like Matali, who is the vegan publisher. I can refer them over to her. If they need a PR person, Sandra Nomoto is a great PR person to help. She worked with Dr. Angela Crawford on her most recent book, Vegan Transformation, did a phenomenal job. So if I can't help the person through helping them to get their podcast started, or helping them to get on podcast shows, how to package their message, how to get out there and speak, how to write a book if that's appropriate, I have plenty of people within the vegan space I can refer them over to.
Right. That's good. And what are the biggest mistakes that you see these vegan startups do when they're trying to build authority of what they're doing?
I think, thank you for that question. That's a great question. I work primarily with solopreneurs and independents. I don't anymore really work with corporations at this point in time. It doesn't mean that I won't at some point, but primarily I see the mistake that they make is they have not done enough research on the market. They don't really know if what they're trying to offer is going to be something that people want to invest in. They give up too quickly. I think that one of the things that people don't realize is there's going to be ups and downs with the economy, and especially right now. Right now is such a volatile time for so many people. And honestly, I think and I'm going to do some blogging and podcasting about this. I think one of the best things that the people who have books on nutrition to do with plant-based eating, how to cook inexpensive recipes, they need to be out there big time. They need to just be blogging, getting on podcast shows. With the SNAP benefits that are being cut right now, teach people how to eat healthy. Don't judge people and don't say, oh, you shouldn't be buying potato chips and you shouldn't be buying sodas. Right. You know what? We're not in their shoes. We don't understand what they're going through. And they've been given a lot of misinformation. So rather than passing judgment, why not put content together, start a Substack and put content together that helps people to be educated on a healthy way of living in a very cost-effective way of cooking meals. I was talking with Dr. Lori Marbus. Her episode on my show just went live, and she has a Substack that she has thousands upon thousands of subscribers. And she said one article is what turned it all around. It was on 10 ways to tell if you're living a healthy life or something. And all of a sudden it just exploded. And she's all about plant-based eating and plant-based lifestyles. So get out there, put your information out there, and don't always try to make money right away. Create the value, create your expertise, and get name recognition within the market.
Most definitely, that's great advice. I mean,
if I was a nutritionist right now and I had a book on cost-effective cooking, I'd be marketing the heck out of it. I'd be just, looking for every opportunity, because right now people really do need help. It's I feel very blessed to live the life that I live. I don't worry about if I'm going to put food on the table, but I've been there. I know what that's like in my 20s. I made some really poor decisions. That one decision that was a good decision is I stopped drinking, because I was a terrible drinker way back then. Ended up on the streets. But for the grace of God, when I look at people that are really having difficult times, I think, what can we do to help people right now? What can we do to, I just can't even imagine what a lot of families are going through. And then with, the health insurance, what's happening with it. I mean, I could go on and on about this, but the fact is that we need to be kinder to people. We need to have more compassion. And, like the whole issue of people working in factory farms, and people say, oh, they shouldn't be doing that. Sometimes that's the only job that's available. And it's not that they want to be there. So what can we do to help them to find a different way to go down the path of life? I truly believe that as vegans, our whole message is compassion. Let's be compassionate.
True. I think that right now we're at a place where maybe that ranchers advocacy that is helping individuals who are in animal agriculture transform. Mm-hmm. I think this is a good time for it. And I think that somehow we need to kind of elevate that option to individuals, because not only it helps them, but it helps us all, because
Absolutely.
agriculture is, besides all the other things that are influencing our destruction of earth, animal agriculture is one of those things. So maybe that's one of the things that we can put forth is, give that more light, you know.
Absolutely. I love that idea because anything that's a positive, what can we do to help raise it up? What can we do to, like you say, put a light on it so that people become aware that it even exists? Because right now, people, if you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right now, a lot of people are at the very bottom in survival mode. They're just trying to survive and they don't know what they don't know. And,
Right.
it took me till I was 64. Who am I to judge somebody in their 30s if they're not vegan at this point in life? And so what can I do to help? What can I do and I think we should all be asking ourselves that question. For example, in our local area in Lane County in Oregon, we have a woman that runs a very successful business, and she's bringing a group of us together to go deliver boxes of food. Now, some of the food that is going to be in there, it may not be what I'm going to eat, but if that's going to keep somebody alive and keep food on their table, I'm not going to sit there and pass judgment. I might make recommendations, but it's like I need to get out of my own way and do what I can to help people to have a better quality of life. I was talking to a gentleman who works at a local Albertson, and I went in there the other day and he gave me a big hug and he goes, "I have to tell you, I have not had meat in 2 months." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "And it's because of you." He goes, "I follow you on Facebook and I love your stuff." And it's like, wow, I had no clue. I had no clue whatsoever. So you never know how you're going to impact somebody.
Right, right. And not only with the animal agriculture, but also with people, learning, like you were saying, learning how to get the whole foods and make them, and know that they could, lower their grocery, some,
Absolutely.
because,
Absolutely. There was a post,
potatoes and grains are
yeah, there was a post by Claire, and I'm trying to think of her last name. She's on
man,
LinkedIn.
Claire Man.
Yes, yes. She had a post about, it had to do with the foods at conferences or something. I don't know exactly what the post was, but a few years ago, I was speaking at a pet industry conference, and I asked the meeting planner, I said, "Would it be possible if I could get plant-based meals?" I said, "I'm plant-based and I'd prefer nothing animal-based." And she said, "I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up the buffet where half of it's going to be plant-based and half of it's going to be regular." And she came to me after and she goes, "I want to thank you for what you recommended." And it wasn't my idea. I mean, she came up with the idea. She goes, "We have gotten such high reviews on the buffet this year." And she goes, "I never knew we had so many vegans in our membership." Boom. And so just by merely making a recommendation, things can change.
Yes.
And it's more cost effective. When people say eating vegan is expensive, it's like, no, it's not. It
No,
really isn't.
I'm like, where are you going?
Yeah, it's like you're buying all the junk food.
I mean, rice, potatoes, come on, beans,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, I think, is that we need to put more of our information on whole food, plant-based diets, because we are in a situation where we have someone saying that we need to eat things that is not correct. They have no medical whatever
Mm-hmm.
behind them. And I just read something just yesterday, I think it was, that it made me go, wow, what the heck is going on? I think it was Robert Kennedy, Robert F.
Okay.
Kennedy.
Okay. That
He
about
said,
says it.
eat more saturated fats and more eggs.
Well, I guess we know who's in his pocket. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I
And
was
that's the
like,
thing. Nancy, I think that what people need to look at is when a so-called expert, so-called now, quotation marks, when they make a recommendation, it's like, Okay, are they getting paid by that industry? What is their ulterior motive? And like, do your research, because I was listening to Mel Robbins this morning on a podcast, and she had Dr. Lee. I'm trying to think of his first name. Anyway, he was talking about before you go out and exercise in the morning, eat something. Well, yesterday I listened to a podcast where the expert said, before you go exercise, you want to go on an empty stomach. And I'm like, okay, what information do we listen to? So I think what people need to do is use common sense. It's like, doesn't it make sense that those animals didn't want to give up their life? Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't it make sense when you see all this stuff about factory farming, the horrendous conditions that animals live under and die under? And that it's not healthy. They're pumped full. I had a friend who posted something about how healthy the beef is nowadays because they're so big, they grow bigger. And I said, you might want to know that the reason they grow bigger, I said, I appreciate that you have your opinion, but I really need you to know it's because they're filled with steroids, toxins, antibiotics. There's all this garbage that they're fed to make them bigger and they die younger. So no, it's not healthier beef. I mean, there's times I just have to speak out. Other times it's like, that's an interesting perspective, but yeah.
I feel that. I feel that. And the other thing is, we're coming to the end of our podcast, but the other thing is, especially now that also the government has now said we don't have to have all those safety guidelines in animal agriculture. So I think you're taking your life into your own hands when you are, because like you said, they're full of hormones, antibiotics. They feed them. Some animals are fed plastic poop. I mean, it's crazy. And now they've taken safety measures off.
We could have a whole podcast.
Yes.
We could go for hours on that topic because you got to wonder, why are all the guardrails being taken down? Why are things being done the way they're being done? And it's like, come on, folks, wake up. You need to do your homework, and don't believe everything that you see on social media, because the reality is there's so much AI out there and it's designed for divisiveness. And so the best thing that you can do is go get some of the older books, like Eat to Live by Dr. Joel Furman is one of the best books out there. The China Study, research about factory farming, and don't just think that it's a bunch of crazy vegans that are trying to sway your opinion. It's like, we have done our research. We live very healthy lives. And I think that's another indicator. It's like when people say, well, I can eat whatever I want. Well, why don't you look at the people who are super healthy, that are living vibrant lives? And do you want to end up with, living your life in a way that you're confined to a hospital bed? Or do you want to go out, with that was a great life, and me, I prefer to go out with, that was a great life.
Me too.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kathleen, this has been great. I could talk to you for another hour.
Thank you, Nancy. This has been delightful. And thank you so much for inviting me to share my information with your community.
Thank you for being on the Vegan Pulse. Bye-bye.